Good evening, children, you should be in bed, it's late. Good afternoon, sirs, you should be busy grinding Mythic 0 dungeons right now. And good morning, ladies, why are you awake in the morning? Who wakes up in the morning anymore? Now, what we have for today is yet another informational video, as it is the case since we are in the first week, in the first very busy week of a new expansion that's gonna be expected. There are a lot of things to take care of, so I thought I would do my part and help in listing a few of the things you should check out, which is how to get gear. TLDR, what's the highest possible item level you can get before the season actually begins, before December the 12th or 13th or 14th, wherever you are, and we start getting the raid, the PvP season and the Mythic Plus season underway. Now, once again, as a reminder, of course, guys, bear with it. As I just started, you will hear it just for a few more days. I am also on Twitch streaming the release of this expansion. You can find me from Europe, usually past 9 to 10 p.m. European time, and then 1 p.m. Pacific and 4 p.m. Eastern. That's where I will be streaming at, so you are free to join. In particular, mostly just to function as my personal bouncing wall. As I like to talk, I like to bounce off ideas and thoughts to other people. It's gonna be nice to have someone to ramble on as I play this new expansion. Now, talking about what you have to take care of when it comes to loot and gear. Let's start with the easiest and simplest possible way to gear up. This is going to be very straightforward, and these are the two infinitely repeatable dungeon modes. That's normal dungeons and that is heroic dungeons. That is really all there is to it. Normal dungeons are 346 item level and heroic dungeons are 359. So very, very early on, you will be able to steamroll through heroic dungeons over and over and over for 2 full weeks. Really, even if you have little time, and also if you're thinking about heroic dungeons being tough or challenging because you don't normally do dungeons or whatnot, come on, they are very, very simple. They're very, very simple already, with characters much undergeared, so it's gonna be very simple for you to just repeat farm heroic dungeons to get, as a starting point, to get all the way up to 359 item level. That's gonna be the base, okay? Now we enter the RNG element, because now we enter Mythic 0, Mythic dungeon, the base, the default Mythic difficulty for dungeons. Now, these dungeons are going to award 372 item levels, so another jump of 13 item levels upwards. As you know by now, I'm assuming, Mythic 0 dungeons have a weekly lockout, which means you can only do them once a week, and you only have, therefore, one chance of looting each and every boss you defeat. Since we have 8 dungeons, then it means your character over the next 2 weeks will have 16 dungeons worth of chances at getting loot at 372 item level. You can, of course, still try to game, you can still try to min-max the possible chances of you to get loot. For example, trying to start groups by inviting people at the highest item level possible so they can trade gear. That could be some help. You can also go even further and try to do things like armor stacking, like for example having more chances at finding useful loot because you are playing with a Brewmaster tank, a Resto Druid healer, a Havoc Demon Hunter, a Rogue, and another DPS Druid, so you are all leather, which means you can all use the same stuff. Those are typical and popular ways to try to maximize the loot you can find in things like Mythic Zeros, because you only have one chance per week, so you can try to get the best possible RNG for your character. That being said, over the course of 2 weeks and 16 different dungeons and some 60 plus bosses you will defeat, you will be quite close. Even while being unlucky, you should be quite close to get most of the gear close to 372 item level. And this is mostly going to be the same for everyone, because, you know, even for entry level players, even for new players, as well as casual players who do not consider themselves as players who do a lot of Mythic Plus, for example, Mythic Zeros are still quite simple and quite straightforward, so being able to complete them, all 8 of them in a week, shouldn't be too challenging, which means everyone should have a pretty fair chance of getting the 372 item level coming from these dungeons. Where it gets a little bit more in-depth and a little bit more challenging, at the very least when it comes to your own time and to your own commitment to professions, is when we are talking about crafted gear. Because even though once the expansion fully launches with its season, with things like Primal Infusions, Concentrated, Primal Infusions, and Primal Chaoses, you will be able to get a much higher item level than this. You will be able to get all the way up to 418 item level. For these next 2 weeks, your item level will be capped up to this. This will be the king of crafting for the first 2 weeks if you really want to focus on crafting something before the season launches, then this is the best possible thing you will be able to get. Titan training matrices are the things you loot either from world quests, which is the default one, as well as some specific elite/epic world quests with the Titan Training Matrix 2, as well as coming from normal dungeon and bosses. Then it gets a promotion, it raises up to Titan Training Matrix 3, coming at the end of heroic dungeon bosses. And then, of course, who guessed it, Titan Training Matrix 4 is going to come at the end of a mythic dungeon. Now, there is one special thing about this Titan Training Matrix, and it is because of the fact that it is only found in Mythic 0 end of dungeon boss, meaning that you can only do it once per dungeon every week. You have 8 Mythic 0 dungeons, which means you have 8 chances at finding this. Yes, these can also be used through a crafting order system, so you might be saying, well, no biggie, if I don't get the Titan Matrix myself, I can just ask for a crafter to craft it for me. Correct. However, the very few drop chance of these every week will also be the same for the crafter. The crafter too will also have 1, maybe 2 of these if he has been lucky in their bags, and it's unlikely he will choose to craft one just for you. It's more likely he will get one for himself as a crafter possibly. So yes, these are a possibility to get some nice higher item level pieces, higher than 372, higher than Mythic 0, although it will be quite rare. It will be quite rare to find them from the end of dungeon bosses in Mythic 0, and it will be quite rare to find crafting order profession havers to use those for other players rather than using them for themselves. Now, besides the crafting, if you want to go for further ways of getting item level, there are a few rewards from Renown, the early ones at 376 item level, that you can find depending on how much Renown is going to be grindable in the first 2 weeks. So that's something to be seen yet, but you know, you should have been busy if you wanted to focus certain professions. For example, you would have been busy focusing certain factions and their Renown already. The last couple of points for your gear are going to be 1, I know, I have to say the bad word, I have to say it because it might be a good source of gear for some players, PvP. That is a good way to get gear through bloody coins. Bloody coins will award you with 366 item level gear, which is essentially the halfway through between heroic and Mythic 0. The bloody coins are the things you get from open world PvP themed content. So you can interface yourself with war mode on, go around, do some daily quests for PvP in the world to get bloody coins, to get pieces of gear as well. After the bloody coins of PvP in the open world, there is the other thing from the open world, very, very important, which are world quests. I know, it seems quite shitty right now because you look at your own map and you see most of the world quests anywhere between 340 to 350. However, world quests scale. World quests can go all the way up to something like this. You know, these trinkets you might have seen before, and you might have already done the world quests for these trinkets when they were at 349 or 352 item level. Well, that can keep scaling. So technically speaking, the best way for you to handle world quests is to literally ignore them until Tuesday, until right before your reset. Why? because you will have done a whole bunch of heroic dungeons, you will have done a whole bunch of Mythic 0 dungeons, you will have perhaps crafted some pieces of gear with your Titan matrices, you will have gotten some bloody coins with PvP, maybe you even got to Renown 10, 11 or 12 for the breakpoint to get your 376 piece of gear from there as well, which means your world quests will have increased in average item level and maybe will be worth doing for some pretty good rewards. Obviously, if you already done them all, if you already rushed your world quests because you were at 332 and you wanted to make the breakpoint of 340 to be able to queue up for heroic dungeons, then it's too late. It's too late for you at least until Friday, when we will get a new batch of world quests available. Just remember that at the start of this expansion, world quests can be a very powerful tool for you to get gear, but only if you wait, only if you are patient and you grow your item level other ways before actually doing and completing those world quests. Lastly, we have the biggest piece of gear you can get, the juiciest one, which will require a handful of grinding, is going to be the one in the Cobalt assembly. Very simply, it's this little tiny bits of area around here, which you should all know about because there is an elite world quest in there this week. In that place, there will be reputation as well. By killing mobs, you will be able to have a chance of looting certain items, which will increase your rep with the Cobalt. And once you get at high enough rep with them, you will be able to choose one of these 3 rings. 389 is the item level. These are unique equipped, so you can only choose one of them, but 389 is a very high starting point before the season begins. The farming itself, if you have a very efficient group, can take you even less than 1 hour. If you have a less efficient group, because the place is of course filled with elites, and more importantly, if the place is going to be crowded with other players trying to do the exact same thing as you are, then it might take you a couple of hours, perhaps a little bit more than that, depending on just exactly how farmed the zone is currently being. That is the last bit, that is the last way you can get yourself some alternative methods of gearing up that isn't just gear from dungeons or gear from world quests or crafting. In the better case scenario, you should look at a release of the season for the absolute best, the higher end of item level, past the 375, past the mid 370s as the goal as your item level for your character before the official full-fledged release of the season in a couple of weeks. So for today, this is the recap when it comes to gear. It was more likely a reminder more so than an informational video, perhaps to all of the players who weren't really keeping track of how to gear up and what to do to gear up. Maybe they were worried they were missing out on some mega cash, some freebie rewards they were missing somewhere. These are the ways for you to get gear in these first couple of weeks of Dragonflight. So for today, with this over, I am going to leave you to whatever else you were doing for the day. Now, we are starting by thanking, of course, all of my Patreon supporters for the contribution and the support to myself and this channel. You can still support, of course, without having to spend a dime. That is still appreciated. Liking on this video and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself, are still appreciated ways of supporting. Lastly, you can also find me in other locations, like following me on Twitter. Subscription to my Patreon is still open over there, and also I am found nowadays on Twitch as well, if you ever want to pop by and check out my streaming adventures. With this done, I'm going to leave you now for real. Thank you guys again for watching. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, every time I say I have to go and eat, I remember I have to do something, I look at the clock, and it's now been 4 hours later. God damn it!